Hi everyone, this is Unit 1.7, and what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be deciding common denominators. And how we're going to do it is just so that we can add and subtract. In lesson 1.6, as we did yesterday in class, I can add and subtract mixed numbers that have common denominators pretty easily. For example, 4 and 1/9 plus 2 and 1/9 is 6 and 2/9, right? And 5 and 3/8 plus 2 and 2/8 is 7 and 5/8. And 1 and 1/6 plus 3 and 4/6 is 4 and 5/6. And even on the tricky ones where it was like, so this one, so 4 and 1/3 plus 6 and 1/3 is 10 and 2/3. And I can relatively do it easily, even when the answers are kind of like this. 2 1/4 plus 2 3/4 is 4/4 or 5. So even with that, and even when I've got denominators that are when my addition becomes a little bit more complicated. Now, like I said yesterday in class, I don't add very well. Like, these are pretty easy, I can do in my head, but for these I might want to write them upside vertical. Well, 8/9 plus 7/9 is 15/9, and we know that with an improper fraction, we've got to turn that into a mixed number, which would be 15 in the house, 9's knocking out the door. 9 goes into 15 one time with 6/9 left over. The 6/9 is our fraction, and I'm going to carry the 1 over there. So it's now 11 and 6/9, and that can get thrown. Okay? So when we were adding and subtracting with mixed numbers, we were always using common denominators. And what I mean by common denominators is the denominators matched. Okay? Even when I had to borrow down here from the 5, because 5 and 1/5 minus 3 and 5/6, I can't take 5 away from 1, but I was able to borrow and make that 4. And then I added 5 over 5, because that's like adding 1. And I got 6/5, and then it became 6/5 minus 5/5 is 1/6. Then 4 minus 3 was 1. And I didn't have to worry about the division. I didn't have to worry about the denominator. I did have to worry about borrowing correctly, but I didn't have to worry about the denominator. Well, the unfortunate news is that the days of not having to worry about your denominators are coming to an end. And that's what we're going to do with Unit 1.7. We're actually going to look at what we mean by finding a common denominator. And when I mean common denominator, remember, I'm talking about, denominator is a very long word to spell. Can we just agree to that? What I'm talking about is the same denominator. Okay? I'm talking about the same. They need to matchy-match. They're twinsies, if you will. Okay. So in the first one, we have 1 whole. And in one of our unit fractions is 1/2 plus 1/3. Well, I can't, sorry, Dan is getting excited about sports. He's watching the Raider game. So I'm kind of recording a math lesson, so could you not yell across the house? Okay. Sorry about that. Our house is really tiny, so it's easy for us to yell at each other across the house. We don't need an intercom system. We have our voices. All right. So I can't add 1/2 and 1/3 together because they're not the same size. And nobody wants half a cookie that doesn't match the other half. Like, let's be real. So instead, I've got to make the pieces all the same size. And how I'm going to do that is by cutting them into a common size. I can cut 1/2 into 3 pieces, and I can cut 1/3 into 2 pieces and get the 1/6 size. So when I'm finding a common denominator, what I'm really doing is finding a common size. And fractions, it's all about the size of the piece. And so we want to find a common size piece. And how we do that is actually finding equivalent fractions. Okay? Because before I can add 1/2 plus 1/3, I've got to get that denominator common. So before I can add, I can't until I find a common denominator. That's really the key point of that, is if the denominators don't match, you have to make them common first. It's a rule. Okay, so in order to make 1/2, so what I made instead was, and I'm sorry, like it's where I'm recording, this was 3/6 plus 2/6. So what I did was, how did I get 1/2 to 3/6? Well, we know from equivalent fractions, I multiplied 2 by something, and I multiplied it by 3. And you can tell that because of 1, 2, 3 pieces. So top and bottom are 3. And 1/2 times 3 over 3 is 3/6, which matches my picture. And then 1/3, what did I multiply it by to get to 2/6? I multiplied it by 2. And that matches because 2 times 3 is 6. Okay, so the common denominator is 6. And remember, I can't do anything until that denominator is common. So now that's step 1 of the multi-step fractions. Okay, so let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 is asking us to add 1/4 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. Okay, so I can't do that until I make the denominators common. And how I'm going to do that is by finding the first common size piece. And the first common size piece I can find is 1/12. I can cut them into 1/12. And so in order to do that, I cut them up. And if I look right here, 1/4 is really 1, 2, 3/12. And 2/3 is really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, let me try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 7/8. So 8/12. Okay. So now I've done the counting of the fractions, because you're not going to draw fraction bars to do all this. Hold on. Let me move something out of the way. So instead, I'm going to do this down here. Now, what did I multiply 4 by to get to 12? Well, 1, 2, 3 pieces. So top and bottom by 3. And 2/3 would be by 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. So 3 times, because remember, each third is a fourth. So 3 times 4. Okay, so our common denominator is 12. And now I can add them together. But I can't add them together if the bottom numbers don't match. All right. So we have 1/4 plus 1/2. All right. Well, again, I can't add this piece and this piece because they don't match. And somebody's going to get crabby. And you don't want people to get crabby. So you can actually do it 2 different ways. And that's what the book is showing you. This is why we have 2 of the fraction unit bars that are different. The first way that the book did it is they multiplied 4 times 2 and they got 8. Okay. So we've got 2/8 plus 4/8. And that totally works. It absolutely works. Totally works. You're going to have to simplify when you get to the end of the problem. However, there's an easier way. 2 is a factor of 4. 4 is a multiple of 2. So you could have just left it as 4. So 1/4 and then 1/4 plus 2/4. Either way works. Honestly, either way works. This is a little bit more work at the end, but whatever. So the common denominator that I would use is 4 because I wouldn't have to simplify. I wouldn't have to simplify at the end. Sorry. And now here's why. Because 2/8 plus 4/8 is 6/8. Okay. Those are both composite numbers that I can multiply by 2, and I would get 3/4. Well, if I multiply 1/4, so instead, if I take the 4th option, Down here, 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. Same math, just one extra step. And that works either way. Okay, so number 4, does 1/2 plus 1/3 equals 2/5? I'm going to say a hot no, because neither 2 nor 3 multiply together to get 5. So that's a hot mess. And I can put, and the first number that 3 and 2 have in common is 6. So, I'm going to say no to that. But you know what? Let's try. So I'm going to do this 1/2 times 3/3 gives me 36. And 1/3 plus 2/2 equals 4/6. So that would be 7/6. So it's an improper fraction, so the answer is no. Okay? Mainly because the first number they have in common is 6. Okay. So when in finding equivalent fractions, that's kind of what we're doing. So in order to add these together, you have to find common denominators. Sometimes you're going to find common denominators for both or one. So in this case, and we're going to do this one together, and I rewrite things. I don't go side to side. My brain doesn't work like that. So when I do the math, I'm going to show it to you how I would do it. Okay, so I have 7/10, and I apologize for the shadow, plus 1/5. Okay. Well, I know that 7/10 plus 1/5, I can't add them together because I don't have common denominators. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, what's the first number that 5 and 10 have in common? Well, your brain should be screaming at you, 10? 5 times 2 is 10? So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to multiply the 7 times 10, 7/10. I don't need to. It's already in this form. I need it. But then I'm going to multiply 1/2 to get to 10. And like I said before when we were finding equivalent fractions, this is what I want to see because it's explaining your process. It takes an extra second, but it'll help you in the long run. That is not negotiable for those of you who don't think what I say matters. It is required. Okay, so what number times 5 equals 10? Well, that's 2. So now I've got 1/5, so 1 times 2 is 2. So now, instead, I've got 7/10 plus 2/10, which equals 9/10. Totally doable. Totally doable. Okay, so in that case, I only had to find an equivalent fraction for one of the two fractions. And 5 is a multiple or a factor of 10, so it was a fairly easy one to do. All right, but the next one is 3/11 plus 1/2. Well, the first number that 2 and 11 have in common is 22. So both of these have to be multiplied. Okay, and it happens to be that it's the bottom of each, right? So 11 times 2, that's 6 22nds, and then 2 times 11, so it's 11. So now we can add these pretty easily, and that is 6 22nds plus 11 22nds. And that gives us 17 22nds. Okay. All right. So we're going to do one more, and then I'm going to let you try these on your own. Now, from here on out, you cannot add and subtract fractions with uncommon denominators without finding common denominators. You just can't do it. It won't work. It'll fail to, it will be, it won't ever boot up. It's not going to work. So from here on out, prepare yourselves through the rest of your lives of finding common denominators, at least in 5th grade. Okay. So 6 and 4. Now in this case, we can absolutely multiply 6 times 4 and get 24, 24. It'll totally work. Except 24 is not the largest number. It's not the smallest number they have in common. We are looking for the least common multiple. Remember when we learned about that? So we're looking for the smallest number they have in common as an answer when we multiply them. So what we can do is find the first multiple they have in common. Now, if you or you're like, I don't know, Mrs. Hutchins, like, all right, so let's just stick with what we do know. We know that 1/6 and 3/4, I can multiply both of them to get 24. And absolutely, should you be using your planner page 5 for the multiplication chart? Yes. If you do not know your multiplication chart, that is not an excuse for getting this done. Or if you don't know your multiplication facts, do not think that is an excuse for not doing your work. Page 5, y'all, page 5. Okay, so 6 times 4 equals 24. So that's 4 over 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. And 4 times 6, so top and bottom by 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Okay, so now we're going to get 22 24s. Okay, totally acceptable answer. Totally acceptable answer, except that is a really large fraction. And both 22 and 24 are even numbers, which means I'm dividing top and bottom by 2. I'm finding the equivalent fraction. I'm simplifying my answer, and 22 divided by 2 is 11, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. Okay, had you gone, the first common number they have is 12, you wouldn't have to simplify. But again, totally reasonable answer. So over here, it was 4 24ths plus 18 24ths, which equals 22 24ths, top and bottom divided by 2, and we got 11 12ths. Okay, folks, I want you to try the rest of the page on your own. And remember, we're finding common denominators before we can add or subtract them. All right? Good luck.